She was a preacher's daughter, raised to obey, stay quiet, and pray. He was the most feared lawyer in town, divorced, the kind of man she was taught to stay away from. But when her brother was falsely accused, he was the only one bold enough to defend him. And somewhere between sins, promises, and a kiss that never should have happened, she discovered that love can bloom, even on the most forbidden ground. Before we dive into this breathtaking story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and leave a like. That helps us grow and brings these stories to more hearts like yours. They said faith was all a person needed, but that Monday morning, Tessa Kiersten learned that faith, alone, didn't stop doors from slamming, didn't silence cruel whispers, and certainly didn't get a brother out of jail. The sunlight streamed through linen curtains that were just a little too clean. The preacher's house was always like that, spotless on the outside, stifling on the inside. The walls bore verses in golden frames, but the air, oh, the air, had never felt heavier, and every minute of silence was its own kind of judgment. Not having breakfast? Her father's voice came from the kitchen, dry and stern, like a man who spoke more with God than with his own children. Tessa held a porcelain mug, still empty, as if hoping it would fill on its own was better than sitting at the table with him. She didn't respond right away. The floor beneath her feet was cold. The light-colored dress she wore, always below the knee, clung slightly to her skin in the heat. "I'm not hungry, Daddy," she finally replied, voice quiet but firm. Too firm for a preacher's daughter. He said nothing, not even an amen. The newspaper lay on the table. The headline was about something else, but the name that mattered was there, tucked into the crime section, printed in small, venomous letters. Preacher's son involved in assault case at church. Kanye Kirsten may face charges of attempted assault and bodily harm. Lies printed on thin paper, the kind that tears easily, but cuts deep. She closed her eyes for a moment. Kanye's face came to mind, the way he smiled crookedly, like he questioned everything their father said, and how he was always the first to defend anyone at a disadvantage. He was impulsive, sure, but never cruel, never an attacker. But the town now treated him like a monster, and it all started last Friday. Cassia Mendez had been rehearsing a hymn alone in the side hall of the church, her timid voice getting lost between empty pews when she heard the door shut behind her. "You don't have to stop. I love it when you sing," said Drew, leaning in the doorway with that half-smile that always made girls shrink away, even if they didn't know why. She tried to stay composed. "I was just rehearsing, and beautifully," he said, stepping closer, like he was testing boundaries. "That voice of yours, I bet it sounds even sweeter in a whisper, doesn't it?" "Drew." She stepped back, but her hip bumped into the closed piano. "I have to go. Not before you let me get a closer look at all this grace." His hand moved fast, gripping her arm tightly. His body leaned in, trapping her between the piano and his chest. The other hand rose, too bold, brushing lightly along her neck, his thumb grazing beneath her jaw. "I swear, if you scream, I'll kiss you. If you stay quiet, I'll just keep looking. Sound fair?" Cassia held her breath, her eyes welled up, chin trembling. Fear clung to her like a second skin. That's when the door burst open. "Let go of her now!" Drew turned, laughing. "Well, look who it is. The preacher's little brother, here to defend the maiden's virtue. How cute." I said, "Let her go." "And what are you gonna do, Kanye? Give me a sermon?" Kanye lunged, grabbed Drew by the collar and slammed him hard against the wall. "Touch her again and I'll knock your teeth out in front of the whole congregation. You have no idea who you're messing with. My father. Your father's not here. And if he shows up, he can pick you up from the hospital." Drew tried to shove him back but wasn't quick enough. The first punch landed square on the jaw. The second hit his nose. Blood sprayed. Drew stumbled over stacked chairs and fell to the ground with a groan. Kanye was breathing hard, fist trembling. Cassia sobbed quietly, curled up, her whole body tense like she was still trapped. Kanye stepped closer, gently took her hand, and whispered, "Let's get out of here." And the next day, Drew told the story, backwards. Said Kanye tried to assault Cassia, said he threatened her, said he was harassing her behind the church when Drew showed up to save her. It was a lie, but the name Hargrove carried weight. Too much weight. "Cassia? Cassia stayed silent. The girl refuses to talk, the sheriff had said, and the injured party is the son of an important man. With a story this shaky, your brother was arrested on the spot. The complaint was accepted. Tessa remembered seeing Kanye being taken away. He was still wearing the white dress shirt from service, the sleeve stained with someone else's blood. His eyes were hard, not with fear but fury. "I was protecting her," he shouted. "I saw what he was doing." But no one listened, or they pretended not to. At the station, Cassia sat with her mother crying softly, eyes fixed on the floor. When Tessa tried to approach, she only heard, "I'm sorry, I can't. They'll take everything from us." That's when Tessa understood. The truth was being swallowed by fear, and expecting justice inside the church was like begging water from a dry well. Now, with the town boiling over in rumors, Tessa clutched to her chest the only thing that still gave her some sense of direction, a printed page with the name Daniel Ravencourt on it. She had first heard his name whispered, behind the very walls of her own church. "A devil in a suit," one sister had said, as if speaking of Lucifer at a family gathering. "A man who ruins marriages and defends sinners." But he was also the only lawyer willing to take on cases no one else would touch. And she had no one left. "May God forgive me," she whispered, closing her Bible and stepping outside with her eyes fixed on the sky. But if Cassia went silent, then let the sinner speak for us. The office building didn't look like the kind of place where justice lived. Modern, tall, with walls of glass, and light marble, it reflected the city's gray sky as if mocking the weight Tessa carried in her chest. She climbed the steps with her Bible still tucked in her bag, an old habit of clinging to something sacred, and stepped through the revolving door with steady steps. The click of her heels echoed against the polished floor, sounding like guilt. His name was on the silver plaque, D. Ravencourt, Criminal, Penal, and Strategic Law. "We defend what no one else dares to." She swallowed hard. On the 15th floor, the reception area was far too elegant for a girl raised on wooden pews. There was a brown leather couch, a modern abstract painting, and a receptionist in a tight black dress with red-painted nails. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" she asked without even looking up. "No, but it's urgent. It's about my brother. He was arrested. Unjustly. Full name, Kanye Kairston." The woman glanced sideways, her brow furrowing slightly at the last name. Ravencourt doesn't usually take walk-ins, but she typed something, sighed. "You may go in. Back room. Knock first." Tessa walked down the narrow hallway, her heart beating in sync with the artificial lights overhead. Every step felt too far from the church, too far from her father, too far from the world she knew. She knocked. "Come in." The voice was low, smooth, like silk sheets falling off a clothesline. When she opened the door, she saw him. Daniel. Ravencourt stood leaning against a bookshelf, wearing a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, the top two buttons undone, and an open file in his hands. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead. His eyes, dark gray, locked onto her like he already knew who she was. For a moment she couldn't speak, not because he was handsome, though he was, almost offensively so, but because he didn't rush anything, not even his gaze. He was the kind of man who looked at people the way others read secrets, like he already knew. "Miss Kairston?" he asked, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Yes, that's me." "The preacher's daughter?" "Yes. And yet you're in my office?" The question sliced through the air like a sharp blade. She lifted her chin even as her face flushed hot. "I'm here as a sister, not a daughter." His eyes gleamed, a quick razor-sharp spark. "And what did your brother do?" "Nothing. Unusual," he murmured, taking a seat. "Most of my clients start that way. Go on." She sat, tense, her purse resting on her lap like a shield. With a firm voice, but without drama, she told him everything. The rehearsal, Cassia, Drew, the fight, the lie, the girl's silence, the scandal, the arrest, the shame. Daniel listened all the way through, without interrupting, without blinking too much. When she finished, he simply folded his hands and spoke calmly. "So your brother was arrested for being impulsive, and for being, in the right place at the wrong time. He was arrested because the real culprit has a more powerful last name." And you believe him that certainly? She looked the lawyer in the eye. If I didn't believe him, I wouldn't be here. But you knew what they'd say if you came. Yes. And you still came. My brother won't rot in jail for a crime he didn't commit. Not if I can stop it. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. And why me? Because no one else would. Take the case. Maybe because no one wants to pick a fight with the Hargroves. Maybe. Or maybe because they know that if I take it, it won't be pretty. I play dirty when I have to. I don't give speeches. I don't pray with clients. I don't follow any of the morals your father preaches. I do whatever it takes to win. And that's exactly what my brother needs right now. A tense silence stretched between them. Daniel leaned forward across the desk, studying her more closely. His gaze was sharp, but not vulgar, never vulgar. It was like a calculated flame, the kind that only burns if you dare get too close. And you, Miss Kirsten, are you willing to get burned a little, if it's for your brother? She didn't flinch. If I have to, yes. He smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd just gotten interested, not just in the case, but in her. Then you're hiring a sinner. I'm hiring a lawyer. It's going to be a mess, you know that? I'm used to it. He stood, walked to the bookshelf, pulled out an empty folder and said, without looking at her, I'll take the case. She exhaled, the air leaving her chest like a forbidden relief. But there's a condition, he said, turning slowly, almost deliberately. You're going to tell me everything, including what your father would think about this. And if there's anything you haven't told me yet, now's the time. I've told you everything. We'll see. He stepped toward the door and opened it for her. The truth, Miss Kirsten, rarely comes from the mouths of saints. But sometimes you can see it in the eyes of the desperate, and yours are saying more than you'd like. Tessa walked past him, feeling the heat of his body far more than the hallway's air conditioning. Before leaving, she turned back. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You'll hate me before you ever thank me. I'm ready. He smiled again, but this time there was a trace of respect in his eyes. Maybe something more. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken, but for the first time since her brother's arrest, Tessa felt time finally turning in her favor, even if it meant walking alongside the devil. The sound of the lock echoed down the narrow corridor. Daniel walked with his hands in his pockets, his jacket open, steps slow and certain, the kind of walk that belonged to a man who'd been in far too many prisons to be intimidated by metal bars and the scent of expired disinfectant. Cell 6, said the guard. He's calmed down now. Good. I prefer to talk without chairs flying at my head, Daniel replied, without even glancing at the man. Turning the corner, he saw the boy. Kanye was sitting in the corner of the cell, elbows on his knees, his stare too hard for someone barely in his 20s. A faint bruise still colored his nose from the night of the fight, and his eyes, the same shade as his sister's, didn't blink as they locked onto the man standing before him. You the lawyer? The voice came out rough, almost mocking. Of all the titles I've been given, that's the gentlest one. Who sent you? My father? Daniel stepped closer to the bars, meeting his eyes. No, your sister. Tessa? She walked through the moral hell you all live in and knocked on my door like she knew no one else would. And you agreed? Not out of kindness, but because when someone believes in someone else enough to face her own, father, the whole town, and the church, I listen. And I charge a lot. Kanye leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. She shouldn't be involved in this. And yet, she's the only one who had the guts to stand up for you. Silence. Where are the others? Church friends? Your father? Exactly, gone at the first headline. She wasn't. Daniel stepped closer to the bars. The cold overhead light cast sharp shadows on the floor. He spoke calmly, but with weight. I'm not here to comfort you or save your soul. I'm here because someone has to dig the truth out from the mud they threw on top of you. And you think you're that someone? I don't think anything, kid. I am. Kanye stared at him for a long second. Then he gave in. Drew was forcing himself on Cassia. He cornered her. His hands were on her neck, and she was frozen. I saw it. I yelled. He laughed, said I wasn't going to do a thing. Daniel listened, never breaking eye contact. And you did. I did. I hit him. Do you regret it? Kanye clenched his jaw. No. Good. Because if you'd hesitated, Cassia might not be alive today. There was silence, this time filled with more than anger. "I'm getting you out of here," Daniel said at last. "But it's going to be ugly, it's going to hurt. And you'll have to trust me more than you've trusted any preacher. I lost my faith a long time ago." "Perfect. Then we're starting from the same place." When he left the prison, Tessa was waiting in the car, hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the entrance like she was hoping for a miracle, but bracing for anything else. Daniel got in without ceremony. "He's more hard-headed than you, and you're already a piece of work." And he told the truth clearly, with all the details missing from the police report. "That's good. That's gold." She smiled, a small smile, curved, but genuine. "And now? Now we get our hands dirty. See, where this Drew slipped up. Who's protecting him and who's willing to fall with him?" She started the car. He didn't comment on the fact that she was the one driving, but he noticed. A woman like Tessa, raised under watchful eyes, taking the wheel beside him? Interesting. "Do you always drive?" he asked casually. "Yes. It's a way of running, without actually running." "And do you usually give rides to sinful lawyers?" "Only the ones who look like they know what they're doing." "So you trust me?" "Not yet, but I'm trying." Daniel turned to her and smiled with the ease of a man who'd won far uglier wars than this one. "You don't have to trust me. Just follow me. And what if the road is too dark? We learn to see in the dark, when we realize the light's been lying to us our whole lives." Tessa bit the inside of her cheek, as if holding back a reply, but instead of answering, she just turned up the radio and let the music drown out what even she couldn't name. "I'll drop you off at the office," she said, more practical than emotional. "And tomorrow? Tomorrow I can stop by with the church documents, if that helps." He glanced at her in profile, unhurried. "It helps, and seeing you again helps too." "Is that professional, Ravencourt?" "Absolutely not." She parked in front of his building. He got out, but before closing the door, he said, "The cafe on the corner of Baldwin Street, noon, and wear something light. It's going to be hot. To investigate or to provoke? Who says we can't do both at the same time?" She laughed, softly, but she laughed. The cafe sat at the end of a street where saints didn't walk. Daniel arrived first, of course. Chose the back table, ordered 2 coffees, one bitter, one nearly sweet, and leaned back in his chair like he already knew she'd show up. And she did. She walked in, light dress swaying gently, her eyes scanning the place like she knew she didn't belong there, but dared to walk in anyway. He was already there, black shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes that missed nothing. "You're becoming dangerously interesting, Kirsten, and you're getting dangerously comfortable with my name." He chuckled, low, a disguised invitation. She sat down. "Did you find anything?" "I found 2 things, he said, pulling a thin envelope from his folder. "Cassia's sign-up form for the choir, and the document where she refused to give a statement. But something's off. The signature looks forced." "Forced how?" He turned the paper toward her. Tessa looked. "She writes with rounded loops. This is all stiff, sharp. It looks like someone signed it for her." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You know your voice changes when you're about to uncover the truth." She blinked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "It gets firmer, deeper, less polite." "And is that good or bad?" "It's dangerous." "Why?" He leaned in, slightly across the table, his face just inches from hers. "Because women who learn to speak like that end up realizing they don't need anyone to save them. And does that threaten men like you?" "It excites men like me." Tessa paused. Her heart stumbled inside her chest. "I should get up." "You should," he said, not pulling back. "But you won't." She stayed, because he was right. Hours later, they found Cassia outside the supermarket. She was pushing a cart with a few items. Rice, soap, a pack of cheap cookies. Her mother walked beside her, shoulders hunched. Tessa approached cautiously. "Cassia." The girl froze at the sight of her, her face drained of color, eyes wide. "I can't talk. I'm sorry. I just want to know how you're doing." I'm okay. "Are you afraid?" "I can't," she repeated, glancing subtly at her mother. That's when Daniel stepped forward slowly. "Hi, Cassia. I'm Tessa's lawyer, and Kanye's." She trembled. The cart wobbled. "I don't want any trouble. Neither do we, but if there's something that needs to be said, This might be your only chance. Cassia looked around. A black car was parked across the street. A man in a dark suit sat in the driver's seat. She turned to Tessa, her eyes brimming with tears. His father said that if I talked, my mom would lose our home, that the church would take everything from us, that they'd say it was my fault, that I provoked him. Tessa felt her stomach turn. But it wasn't your fault. I know, but who's going to believe me? Then Daniel spoke, calm and steady. Justice doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs the truth, said at the right time. And that time might be running out, Cassia. She held back her tears and whispered, he pinned me against the wall, said he was going to show me what real men do to girls without fathers. Tessa brought a hand to her mouth. He said that? Cassia nodded, and Kanye showed up. Got me out of there. Took me home. He never touched me, not once. But I can't say that in front of a judge, Cassia murmured. I just can't. Daniel simply handed her a card. When you can, call. Tessa's car pulled up to the cobblestone curb. The sky was heavy. One of those silences that come right before a storm hung over the neighborhood. Thank you, she said, not turning her face toward him. No need to thank me. Not yet. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. He kept his eyes on her, watching every move like someone reading between the lines of a forbidden book. I thought Drew was just an arrogant boy, but he's cruel. Arrogant boys grow up in powerful homes where no one ever says no. When someone finally does, they break, and they break whatever's nearby. She leaned her head against the seat, eyes closed for a moment. Everything I believed in feels like it's turning to dust. Faith is beautiful, until you realize it doesn't feed justice. It only decorates guilt. She looked at him. Do you always talk like that? Like what? Like you know everything people are trying to hide. Maybe I do. And what do you think I'm hiding? He watched her in silence. For seconds, that felt far too long. Desire, he said at last, and anger. You're tired of being restrained. That's arrogant, or just too honest. She opened the door, ready to leave, but he caught her arm, gently, no force, just enough to stop her. The look they exchanged wasn't pure. It wasn't vulgar either. It was human, dangerous, a little too honest. She almost said something, but the door to the house next door swung open. A neighbor with sharp eyes stared from the porch. Tessa pulled her arm away, lifted her chin, and walked out without looking back. Daniel stayed in the car, with the bittersweet taste of a temptation not yet tasted, but close. The neighbor was still watching from the porch as Tessa crossed the sidewalk without looking back. The night wind played with the hem of her dress, but nothing in her wavered. On the outside. Inside, it was a different story. The front door shut with a dry thud, and for the first time, the silence of the pastor's house felt heavier than any judgment outside. She didn't sleep well that night. Daniel's eyes kept coming back to her. The way he spoke, the way he stopped speaking, the way he made her feel, alive and conflicted all at once. The next morning, she arrived early at the office. I brought the youth group documents, she said, holding the folder with both hands. And you brought that silence with you, or did it ride in the back seat? He replied, without lifting his eyes from the screen. She smiled subtly. Do you always start your day provoking people? Only when I spend the night thinking. Thinking about what? He closed the laptop. About what your voice would sound like, if you said what you really think. She sat down, and didn't answer. 2 open folders, a pile of documents on the desk, a cup of coffee almost cold, and a sideways glance that said everything their mouths hadn't dared to. This contract here, Tessa said, narrowing her eyes and tilting her head like she was sniffing out a lie. Cassia really signed this. It's full of terms I don't even understand, let alone her. Cassia didn't sign anything, Daniel replied, running a finger across the paper like he was pointing to a body at a crime scene. This is a scanned signature, classic dirty office file manipulation. You speak with such certainty. I speak with evidence. And anger. Anger at what? At cowards with too much power. She watched him for a moment. There was something fascinating in the way he spoke. He was logical, but there was emotion, a kind of controlled fury that always seemed on the verge of breaking. And that was dangerously attractive. Have you ever been that kind of person? She asked on impulse. Daniel looked up, serious. I've been a lot of things, but never a coward. She nodded slowly. I believe that. He smiled. Short, but real. And you? Ever been anything besides the preacher's daughter? The question caught her off guard. She looked at her own hands, then back at him. I've been the girl who stayed quiet, the sister who obeyed, the fiancée who said no. Fiancé? His eyes lit up. It was years ago. My father chose. I didn't accept. Rebel. Survivor. They stared at each other, for a moment far too long, until he murmured, voice low and deep, "That explains the fire." She blinked. What fire? He simply raised one eyebrow, that half-smile casting doubt on everything, and setting everything on fire. The next morning, Thessa arrived at the office with a box of church records. The dress she wore was modest, yes, but the light fabric outlined curves she didn't know, or pretended not to. No? Could tempt? Daniel opened the door and paused just a second too long, watching her, then stepped aside, as if giving way to something inevitable. I brought the meeting minutes, the youth reports, and a coffee, she said, handing him the cup. If it's as good as your stubbornness, it'll be excellent. She raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? That was a problem. They both laughed, and the tension either melted or spread, like smoke in a closed room. They spent hours buried in papers. He explained laws. She pointed out contradictions in the internal records. The desk became a war trench and a place of discovery. You learn fast, he remarked, impressed. You teach well, she replied, even with those poetic interruptions. What interruptions? Your double meanings. Me, you. Maybe it's the only way I've found to survive sitting across from a woman who looks like you and has no idea what kind of damage she causes. She stopped writing. Her heart skipped a beat. I should go. That's the 5th time you've said that, and you're still here. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Hours later, he invited her to attend a hearing at the courthouse. It's not about your brother. It's another case. But I want you to see what it means to fight in a place where there's no faith, only strategy. She went. The courtroom was full. Lawyers, reporters, murmurs, and tension. Daniel walked in with a presence that shifted the air. Dark gray suit, loose tie, sharp expression. It was impossible not to notice him. Thessa watched from the gallery. He spoke like a man dancing on blades, commanded the room, swayed the jury, dismantled arguments with elegance, and without ever raising his voice. With every word, her admiration grew, and with it, another feeling, warmer, deeper, more dangerous. Afterward, in the hallway, he approached her. Well, it was like watching a duel with golden foils. Are you really going to praise me like that in public? I'm just being honest. He leaned in a little closer. Honesty can be dangerous, only when it reveals what wasn't meant to be revealed. And what do you think I'd reveal? She didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. The rain started light, then thickened. Daniel didn't care. He walked toward her car with a leather folder under his arm, hair already damp, jacket open. Thessa rolled the window down slowly, the sound of water rushing into the quiet interior. Are you really going to leave me out in the rain? He asked, with that cynical half-smile she already recognized as dangerous. She unlocked the door. Get in, before your suit gets as soaked as your reputation. He got in and laughed. You're getting sharper. You're a terrible influence. And yet you keep listening to me. Maybe because, in the middle of so many lies, you're the only one who speaks the truth exactly as it is. He went quiet for a moment, then said, I've learned that words too sweet always hide thorns. And you prefer to cut before being cut? I prefer not to fool myself. The world already tries hard enough to do that for us. Love, faith, redemption, big words that never gave me what they promised. She looked at him. There was something more there. Pain, disillusionment, a past still unresolved. And do you think I'm just another false promise? He turned his face slowly, eyes locked onto hers as if every word had cracked open something that had been sealed in silence. No. His voice came lower, deeper. You're the kind of temptation that makes even hell hesitate. The air between them seemed suspended. And you? He asked, unhurried. What's behind that quiet strength of yours? That calm that fools everyone? She took a while to answer. Her hands tightened in her lap. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like something inside me is trying to scream. But I never learned its name. He leaned in a little more, his breath warm, the distance nearly gone. Maybe it doesn't have a name. A pause. Or maybe no one's ever been brave enough to say it. She turned her face, but didn't pull away. Then why are you still here? She whispered. Because you make me feel something I thought I'd never feel again. The silence now burned. He didn't touch her, didn't smile. He just said, be careful, Thessa. Why? Because there's a kind of desire that's born so quietly that when it finally speaks, it's already too late. He didn't grin, didn't tease. He only said, I've never forced anything on any woman. I know, but if you want me to stay away, I don't want that. The rain pounded against the windshield. The sound was almost hypnotic. But I also can't, she added, throat tight. I can't fall into this, Daniel. Then don't fall, he said, voice low and steady. Just feel. She took a deep breath, wanted to say something, to pray, maybe, or run, but she stayed. You know this is going to end badly, don't you? She murmured. Badly, or inevitably. That same week, Daniel asked her to come with him to meet an old contact, a forensic IT specialist who would help track the manipulation of Cassia's signature. The meeting was quick, but revealing. The signature had been copied from an old form. Same curve, same slant, pixel for pixel. Is that proof? She asked. It's the beginning of proof. Now we dig until we find out who ordered the forgery. On the way back, the air felt lighter. She felt that even in the middle of chaos, something was starting to fall into place. Daniel, she said, looking out the car window, have you ever believed in anything? In many things. And why did you stop? Because believing always cost me more than doubting. She glanced at him from the corner of her eye. And what do you feel when you're with me? He took his time to answer. Then with a rough voice, he confessed. Fear. She frowned, surprised. Fear of me? Fear of me with you. Fear of what I might want, of what I might break, of what I might feel. She wanted to tell him he didn't need to be afraid. But how could she say that when she felt the same? The office was quiet. Outside, the city was beginning to dim its lights. Inside, they still glowed, but with that tired tone of late hours, where even truths lose their modesty. Thessa and Daniel stood side by side at the desk. A new report on the case. A new thread of hope. This could take Drew down, she said, eyes on the paper, but her mind already elsewhere. Or light the fire we're going to burn in, he replied, eyes fixed on her. She closed the folder calmly, but her heart was racing. He was watching her with silent intensity. It wasn't raw desire. It was something deeper, a recognition, like someone finally looking into a mirror they never had the courage to face. When I look at you, I see someone who still believes, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. And still, you're walking with the devil. She took a deep breath. What if the devil is tired of burning alone? He stepped closer, slowly. The tension between them was like a cord pulled too tight on the edge of snapping. But he didn't kiss her. He just leaned in, his voice brushing the air between them. When you're ready to fall, I'll be down, here waiting. That night in the room where she had prayed so many times for peace, Thessa couldn't close her eyes. The house was silent, not the devout kind of silence she knew, the one that came after prayers and hymns. This was different, a heavier silence, one full of questions. Thessa sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets perfectly tucked as always. The discipline of a pastor's home allowed no mess, not even in the heart. But hers was a mess. Daniel. She didn't know how one person could be so many things at once. Arrogant, yes, provocative, no doubt, but also perceptive, sharp, steady, and somehow safe. When he spoke, even the things she didn't understand seemed to make sense, like the world stopped spinning for a second just to hear him. And she listened. She didn't want to, but she did. It wasn't just the tone of his voice. It was what was behind it, something that screamed for redemption, even as it mocked it. She lay down, staring at the white ceiling. She felt guilty for thinking so much about him, but there was something there that wasn't sin. Or not only that, it was curiosity, it was admiration, and desire. The word scared her. She had never felt it so clearly. It was like a dull heat, a shiver that came when he got too close, when he said something and let the sentence die in the air just to see if she'd finish it, when he looked at her like he could see beneath her skin, inside her soul. And that was wrong, wasn't it? She tried to pray, but stopped after the second sentence, because this time, she didn't want the feeling to pass. She wanted to understand it. She wanted to feel it a little more. She closed her eyes. She knew that by morning, she'd have to wear the face of the good daughter. But there in the dark, she was just a woman, and Thessa was starting, finally, to understand what that meant. Elsewhere in the city, the night also found no rest. The office was, dark, but he didn't turn on the lights. Daniel sat on the leather couch near the window and let the glass of whiskey rest untouched on the table. Thessa. It wasn't just beauty, though she had that. It wasn't just sweetness, though that was there too. It was a presence. She carried with her a kind of light that didn't blind. It lit up the cracks, and that bothered him. He was used to having any woman he wanted, for a night, for a moment, for the thrill of conquering before, forgetting. It was easy, never took more than a glance and half a truth. But Thessa demanded everything without asking for anything. She made no promises, but she made him want things he'd sworn never to want again. Not a kiss, not a body, but her presence. In his routine, in his thoughts, in the part of his chest where he kept everything he'd already lost. She was everything he avoided, and yet, everything he kept looking for in the eyes of women who didn't have half her. Courage. He remembered the way she crossed her legs with purpose, the way she arranged papers, as if trying to put chaos into order, the look she gave when she meant to say stop, but begged unknowingly for him to keep going. She had no idea the effect she caused, and that was the most dangerous part of all, because Daniel could handle desire, handle passion, handle any power play, but not someone who made him want to protect, and at the same time, surrender. The news traveled faster than any ill-intentioned prayer. It wasn't the watchful eyes of the community, not even the sharp tongues that wandered the church halls like serpents in floral dresses. It was Mrs. Matilda, from the corner bakery, who saw the preacher's daughter get into a dark car that wasn't hers, alone, beside a man with a scruffy beard and a reputation even rougher. The gossip spread down the street like fire through dry brush. In less than 2 hours, it reached the pastor's office, carried by accusatory looks and questions disguised as concern. Pastor Kirsten didn't ask where she'd been. He didn't have to. That night, the summons came as sacred orders always did, with no option to refuse. I need to speak with you, tonight, here, and bring the lawyer with you. Thessa read the message on her phone like one stares down a sentence. Was that what he saw in her now? A defendant? A traitor? A sinner? She took a deep breath, wanted to run far away, but ran toward the most dangerous place instead. She called Daniel. My father wants to see us now. On the other end of the line, he didn't ask if she was sure, or if it was safe. He simply said, meet me at the corner of the church. Wear something that reminds you who you are, and something that'll make him forget. The pastor's study smelled of aged wood, yellowed pages, and polished morality. Everything there seemed crafted to intimidate. The massive cross on the brick wall, the heavy bookshelf lined with black-bound tomes, the light filtering through tall windows that seemed to judge before anyone even entered. Thessa knew every detail of that room. She had grown up listening to sermons there, cried there more than once, over punishments, confessions, and for always feeling that even as the pastor's daughter, she was never enough. But now she wasn't the little girl with braids asking forgiveness for painting her nails, and she wasn't alone. Daniel. Ravencourt walked beside her with the calm of a man who'd faced worse. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored to his frame, and a gaze that carried more than words. It carried ammunition. He wasn't a man who came armed for war. He was the war. Across the room, the pastor stood waiting, arms crossed behind his back. His eyes were locked on his daughter, as if Ravencourt were nothing more than a peripheral shadow. So this is the man you've been spending your days with? Thessa held her posture, didn't flinch, didn't look away. He's the lawyer helping defend Kanye. I don't recall giving you permission to associate with someone like him. She took a deep breath. And I don't recall seeing you lift a finger for your own son. The words echoed like a shouted confession from the pulpit. Daniel said nothing. He knew this battle wasn't his. Not yet. It was hers. And Tessa stood fully present. Broken, maybe, but standing. The pastor walked over to the desk where his worn Bible lay open, flipping to a page like a man seeking divine backup for what was coming next. This man is divorced, known for questionable practices. His public conduct is a scandal, and yet he was the only one who listened when every saint turned their face away. Tessa replied, her voice steady. He's doing for Kanye what even his own father refused to do. The pastor slammed the Bible shut. You're blind, Tessa, fooled by seductive words. I'm tired of words that only judge, tired of prayers that never act. He stepped forward. And where will this rebellion lead you? To a place where love matters more than appearances, where helping others means more than reputation, where my brother still has someone on his side. The silence was cruel, full of wounded pride, of faith used as a chain. That's when Daniel spoke, voice low but firm. I don't bow to men. I'm not a man of the church, sir, but I know all too well what happens when people use God to hide what they don't want to see. The pastor finally turned his face toward him. You're a man who lives without fear. Daniel gave a tired half smile, not sarcastic, just weary. No, I'm a man who's seen what happens to the innocent in the hands of those who call themselves holy. Tessa's father closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked older, harder. If you continue with him, you will no longer have my support. I know, Tessa answered without hesitation, but maybe for the first time, I have faith of my own. She turned her back and walked out. The door closed with a muffled slam. The sound echoed through the church hallway like the cry of everything she was leaving behind. In the car, silence stretched for long minutes. Tessa kept her eyes on the window, as if the world outside was easier to face than what she felt inside. Her hands rested on her lap, trembling slightly, though she pretended to be in control. Daniel drove without hurry. It wasn't the time to rush, it was the time to listen. Do you want to talk about it? He asked with just the right tone of care. No. She hesitated. Not now. He nodded, respected that, but didn't stop noticing the way she was retreating, like a flower trying to resist the night's cold. She turned her face to him, slowly. How do you do that? Do what? Leave me in peace, even when everything inside me is at war. He smiled, but it was a bitter smile. Maybe because I know that war better than you think. She leaned her head against the window, exhausted. My father always said the world out there was dangerous, that feelings are the devil's traps, that reason is safer than the heart. And did you believe him? She didn't answer right away. For a long time, yes. And now? Now I don't know what I believe, but I know that, for the first time, I'm fighting for someone, and that gives me peace, even if the price is too high. The car stopped in front of her house, but she didn't rush to get out. The silence thickened again, but now it was different. It had weight, shape, scent, the kind of silence that comes before lightning. You want to believe God is in control, he said, not looking away from her. But in this world, it's men like me who win the dirty wars. She opened the door slowly, but didn't step out. I should be afraid of you. And are you? She didn't answer. Immediately, she just looked at him. No, why not? Because you look at me like I'm more than I am. And no matter how wrong all of this seems, I need that right now. She got out of the car, but as she began walking toward the gate, she felt his hand catch her arm. Firm, not forceful, just present. She turned. His eyes were darker, they were close. Breathing held. And then it happened. He leaned in, touched his lips to hers, and she didn't pull away. There was no hesitation, no resistance, just surrender. A kiss that wasn't a promise, it was a cry. It was anger, broken faith, restrained desire, and newborn freedom. When their lips parted, it was only because the door of the house next door creaked open. A neighbor appeared, eyes faster than her mouth. Tessa stepped back on instinct, lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and walked into the house without looking back. Daniel remained in the car, breathing slow, with the bittersweet, taste of a temptation he had finally tasted, and it wasn't going to stop there. The cell was small, cold. It smelled of old sweat, damp concrete, and hopelessness. Kanye stood up when the iron door opened but didn't step forward. He just stood there, frozen, as if time had stopped with him. The deep circles under his eyes, the patchy beard, the expression that years hadn't yet brought, but prison days had. Thessa barely recognized him, not because he had changed physically, but because seeing her own brother there, in that place, in that uniform, made everything inside her shake. Kanye. She said his name like she was trying to remind the world that he was still human, still the same boy who used to share candy with her when they were kids, the same one who'd slip her one earbud during church and whisper, "Let me know when the sermon's almost over." He tried to smile, but it didn't come. He only nodded and looked down, ashamed. Daniel stayed silent for a few seconds before stepping closer. "Hey, Kanye, how you holding up in here? I've seen worse days, but not many." Thessa approached slowly like she was afraid of breaking something already in pieces. "I believe you," she said firmly, "and I'm going to prove you're telling the truth, even if I have to take on the whole world." Kanye looked at her. For the first time since she arrived, he truly looked at her, and his eyes welled up. "You shouldn't be here, Thessa." "Don't tell me where I should or shouldn't be, Kanye. You're my brother, I believe in you, and I would never let you go through this alone." Daniel let the moment between them linger for a few more seconds before opening the folder. "We've got a shot. Small, but real. The key witness, Cassia, still hasn't spoken. The prosecution's trying to pressure her into not showing up. But if she speaks, you walk out of here clean." "She's scared," Kanye murmured, eyes fixed on the floor. "They threatened her. Drew's father, he's more dangerous than he looks. He's got people in the police, people in City Hall, people in here." Thessa clenched her fists, but it was Daniel who stepped forward. "She's not alone. If there's any attempt at obstruction, we can flip it back. I've seen men richer and filthier than Drew's father crumble in front of a good judge." Kanye didn't answer. He just leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Thessa felt a pain she didn't know how to name, like whatever faith she had left was being tested, right there, in that cell, in that look. But she wouldn't give in. The next day, the sky was heavy. Thick clouds covered the sun like a cursed omen. Thessa walked through the side corridor and stepped into the small church parking lot, the same lot where, as a teenager, Drew used to lean against his father's car hood and pretend he already ruled the world. He was there, arms crossed, arrogant posture, as if time had done. Nothing but inflate his ego even more. He turned before she even called his name. "The criminal's little sister," he said with that cynical half-smile that had cost him many privileges, and never a consequence. Thessa stood tall. She stopped in front of the storage shed behind the church, where debris mixed with the filthy silence of night. Drew was there, leaning back, arms crossed, like he already knew she would come. "Well, well," he said, his voice already laced with venom. "Came to pray with me or confess you still think about me when you close your eyes?" She held her stance. "I'm here to tell you this is going to end. What you did to Cassia won't go unpunished." Drew laughed, stepping closer with slow strides. "Cassia's not going to say a word. Her mom works in my dad's office, and you know how things work, Thessa." He tilted his head, taunting without fear. "And you, showing up in that dress, with that furious saint act, deep down, you came because you wanted attention. Wanted me to say you look hot even when you're mad." She stepped back. "You're sick. No, Thessa. I'm just a realist. And you know it." He moved in another step. His eyes were those of a man who'd never heard the word no without laughing afterward. "The difference is, now no one's going to protect you." At that moment, a shadow appeared behind her. "She doesn't need protection." The voice cut through the air like a blade. "Because she's not alone." Drew turned, and there was Daniel, in a dark suit, expression unreadable and controlled fury burning in his eyes. "Well, the lawyer's here," Drew sneered. "Gonna sue me for talking too much?" Daniel pulled out his phone, already recording. "For threats, intimidation, abuse of power, and defamation. It's all documented, and Cassia will testify. She wouldn't dare. She already did." Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between Drew and Thessa. "What you did to her, to Kanye, to this community, it's over." Drew's face went pale, but before he could respond, 2 police officers stepped through the gate. "Drew Hamilton," one of them said, "you're under arrest on suspicion of harassment, witness tampering, and filing a false criminal accusation. What? You can explain all that to your lawyer, the other officer replied, if he's brave enough to take your case. Tessa couldn't look away, not from Drew's face, now twisted in outrage, but from the man standing beside her, steady, sharp, cold as ice but burning hot where it truly mattered. Daniel simply said, "Take him." That night, Cassia showed up at Tessa's house with her mother. The young girl was trembling. Her hair was loose, her blouse missing a button, but for the first time there was light in her eyes. I'll speak, she whispered, about what happened. All of it. My mom will come with me. Her mother held her hand like a shield. And Tessa cried. For the first time since it all began. Not from sadness, but from relief. 2 days later, the judge struck the gavel, acquitted of all charges. The sound of wood echoed like a silent thunder. Tessa brought a hand to her mouth. The tears came before she could stop them. Kanye turned his face to her, and in the next instant she ran to her brother. Their embrace lasted longer than the sentence, longer than the words spoken, longer than the pain they had carried alone. Daniel stood beside the defense bench. He didn't smile, but his eyes said everything. When Tessa looked up, she found his gaze. There was no vanity in it, no pride, only a kind of peace, as if that verdict had cleansed something inside him too. Later, outside the courthouse, Daniel waited beside the car, shirt sleeves rolled up, jacket slung over one shoulder, the look of someone who had won, but knew he still had more to lose if he didn't say what was burning inside. The sky was still overcast when Tessa got in the car, but her chest felt lighter, as if, after so many days of struggle, air was finally reaching her lungs again. She looked to the side. Daniel was there at the wheel, silent, eyes fixed on the road ahead, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the storm inside. "Thank you for today," she said, unsure where to place her hands. "For everything, actually." He only nodded. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was dense, as if the right words were trapped somewhere between the car windows, waiting for the moment to be spoken. "My brother," she began, voice low. "He's not perfect, but no one is. Except maybe the idea of perfection my father always sold." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, but his attention was fully on her. "Do you still believe in your father?" Tessa hesitated. "I believe he meant well, but I'm no longer the blind daughter who accepts everything. Faith is mine now. I choose how to carry it." Daniel let out a short laugh, not mocking, admiring. "And how do you plan to do that?" She turned to face him. "By starting to choose what I want, even if it seems wrong in everyone else's eyes, including your own, especially my own." Daniel parked the car at a higher point in the city, where the street curved toward the overlook. The drizzle fell lightly, speckling the windshield with tenderness. Outside, the city lights flickered as if whispering secrets. Tessa unbuckled her seatbelt but remained still, staring at her hands, the night, everything still trembling inside her. "What is it?" he asked, voice rough. "Have you always been like this? Cold on the outside but with a silent hell burning inside?" Daniel looked at her, really looked. "No, I used to burn too hot, and I got burned for it. Now I choose where I strike the match." She almost smiled, but there wasn't space for lightness in that moment. Not with her heart so tight, not with his chest pounding the way it was now. "And if I asked you not to light it, would you really ask me that?" Tessa hesitated, then opened the car door, but before she could step out completely, he grabbed her arm. Firm, not forceful, just enough to stop her. She turned her face slowly. His eyes were dark, intense, as if everything he was, the man, the lawyer, the skeptic, the sinner, was concentrated in that gaze. "You want to believe. God is in control," he said. "But in this world, it's men like me who win the dirty wars. Then maybe God is using a man like you to clean the filth I come from." Daniel didn't say a word. He simply pulled her closer, slowly, until she was nearer than she thought was safe. Their faces were too close, their breaths mingled, their doubts unspoken. She didn't pull away. He didn't ask either. He just leaned his forehead against hers for a second, as if asking for permission, without saying a word, as if saying everything without moving his lips. Tessa closed her eyes, and that was enough. "It wasn't just for your brother," he said without turning his face. His voice came out low, too full. What? I took the case, but it wasn't only for justice. He turned slowly and his eyes were there, fixed, clear, burning. It was because you walked into that office looking fragile, but there was steel behind that dress, Daniel. And because every time you breathe near me, it's like the world gets smaller and there's only this right here. He pointed between them slowly, like someone who didn't want to break anything. This what? This tension, this war, this urge to run and stay at the same time. Thessa wanted to respond, but the air didn't come. He kept going, even lower now. I could have said it was just desire, just skin. I lived like that for too long. But you, he gave a short laugh, humorless. You make me think of promises. I never asked that from you. I know, and maybe that's what makes it so dangerous. His hand touched hers. No rush, no pressure, like asking permission without a word. She didn't pull away, so he leaned in, and the kiss happened, like the best sins do, silent on the outside, loud on the inside. It wasn't rushed or indecent. It was deliberate, deep, almost reverent, as if he were touching something sacred, and he knew it. His hands held her face gently, like someone holding a truth that had waited too long to be spoken. The world outside didn't matter. The city, the church, anyone's eyes. In that moment, there were only the two of them, and everything they still didn't have the courage to say. When they pulled apart, Thessa kept her eyes closed a second longer, as if she didn't want it to end. This shouldn't have happened, she murmured. Daniel touched her chin with his fingers, making her look at him again, but it did. And I don't regret it. I'm not like the women you're used to. I know. I have faith. And I have you, right here. He brought his hand to his chest slowly, the most intimate gesture she had ever seen someone make. Even if just for now, he said. It's already more than I deserve. She wanted to say something, but her soul was too full. Outside, the drizzle had turned into rain, but in there the heat was something else. They stayed in silence, looking at each other as if time had finally learned to respect what they felt. That night neither of them slept, because now they knew that what burned between them wasn't just temptation. It was faith, turning into something else. It was desire, with a name. It was love, maybe, or something even more dangerous, but it was real and it was just beginning. The rain had stopped, but the smell of wet earth still lingered over the church garden, the same church where Thessa had learned to pray, and also to stay silent, where right and wrong always came with visible labels, and love was preached from the pulpits, but measured in whispers. She grew up there, between amen and you mustn't, between long skirts and short glances, between obedience and the absence of being heard. But that morning the bells rang differently. It wasn't a summons, it was a celebration. Pastor Kirsten adjusted the collar of his suit with trembling fingers, not out of fear, but because of something harder to face than any sermon: regret. Since the truth about Kanye came to light, he had found himself stripped of the role he always thought was enough, that of a leader, and he had to face, at last, the most challenging of all, that of a father. He was the one who asked for that conversation. In the back of the church, where the garden was quieter, Thessa, Kanye, and Daniel waited for him. Thessa, standing with her arms crossed, not in defiance but in self-protection. Kanye, sitting on the wooden bench with the steady posture of someone who had already faced the shame of being accused and survived. Daniel, one step behind her, as always, steady, discreet, but present like a shield no one sees. The pastor took a deep breath before speaking. I tried to protect you from the pain of the world and ended up creating another, quieter, lonelier, and maybe even more cruel. He paused. His eyes landed on his son. Kanye, my heart bled when I saw you in that cell, and not because I saw you there, but because I knew that in some way I contributed to it, with my silence, my rigidity, my fear of scandal. I should have shouted your innocence with the same force I used to preach about justice. Kanye swallowed hard, but he didn't look away. He didn't need tears, just the truth. The pastor then turned to his daughter. His voice faltered for a moment. Thessa, I judged you for walking beside a man I didn't know. I accused when I should have. Trusted, I doubted you when you most needed to be supported, and what hurts me the most is knowing that everything you did was to fight for those you love. I was wrong, and I ask for forgiveness." Thessa didn't reply with words, but her teary eyes were the most eloquent answer. Then the pastor lifted his gaze to Daniel. "Ravencourt." The name came out like someone swallowing a whole pride. "I condemned you based on what you're not. A churchgoer, a man of prayer, a part of this community, and I ignored what you showed yourself to be. A real man, one who protects, who honors, who respects my daughter more than many who kneel on Sundays." Daniel stepped forward calmly, his voice steady yet respectful. "I'm not a man of the altar, Pastor, but I'm a man of my word, and mine is given. I love your daughter, and respecting her isn't a concession, it's character." For a moment, the wind blew softly through the garden, as if even the sky wanted to listen better. The pastor nodded and extended his hand. Daniel shook it. No posing, no war. And there, between the end of a trial and the beginning of a new story, a blessing was born. The church had never felt so full, not of people, but of meaning. On that clear spring morning, the light streamed through the stained glass windows like silent blessings dancing over the old wooden floor. The altar, once so cold in Thessa's eyes, now seemed to breathe something else. A new warmth, a guiltless embrace, a faith without shouting. It was the same temple where she had grown up learning what was right, but also where she had been judged so many times just for existing. Today, however, was different. The doors opened slowly, and she walked in, flowing white dress like a cloud about to rain hope. Her hair down, wavy, just the way he always loved. Steady eyes, but tearful, the kind that carried strength and surrender. And on the other side, Daniel Ravencourt. Dark gray suit, elegant, discreet, but what made everyone hold their breath was his gaze. Never, not even in the toughest courtrooms, had he looked at anyone like that. There stood the man who never knelt, who mocked faith, promises, and certainties. And yet, when Thessa walked down the center aisle, he didn't just smile. He cried. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she stopped in front of him. "You're shaking," she murmured back, smiling sweetly. "I'm trying not to fall to my knees. But today, you can." Pastor Kersten, in a light-colored suit and moved expression, took his place at the front. His voice, once so heavy with rules, was now gentle. "We are here to celebrate love, a love that defied judgment, that faced accusations, that broke through the walls we ourselves had built." He looked at Thessa with tenderness, then at Daniel. "We are here because sometimes we must lose our certainties to find what is real." And then the moment came. "Daniel, would you like to say your vows?" The lawyer, the sinner, the skeptic, took a deep breath and spoke. "I never believed in miracles, or destiny, or second chances, but then you appeared, with your quiet but steady faith, with your absurd courage to love, even when everything was falling apart. You taught me that God isn't where fingers are pointed. He is where someone chooses to love. And I choose to love you, every day, even on the days when the sky feels heavy, even on the nights when I doubt myself. You are my most honest prayer, and for the first time, I believe." Thessa couldn't hold back the tears, but her voice was steady, her eyes unshaken, her soul whole. "Daniel, I spent my life believing in promises, but it was you, with all your flaws, who taught me what commitment is. You didn't promise me paradise, but you offered me truth, and gave me peace even in chaos. I love you not for all you changed, but for everything you chose to be for love, and for understanding that character doesn't live in temples, but in the heart of whoever decides to be just, even when no one is watching." Silence that followed wasn't a lack of words. It was too much emotion to fit into them. "You may kiss the bride," announced the pastor, voice thick with emotion and eyes gleaming with pride. The kiss wasn't chaste, nor indecent. It was whole, with all the sins, all the scars, all the choices. When they left the church hand in hand, the sky was clear, and the world a little more right. Because the man who never knelt, today, he knelt his heart. For love, for faith, for Tessa, and finally for God. So what did you think of this story? A preacher's daughter who dared to love, a lawyer who learned to believe, and a love stronger than fear, judgment, and the rules. If this impossible romance made you feel, root for them, gave you chills, or made you see yourself in it, then leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. And don't forget to comment below. Your thoughts help us keep creating stories that hit deep.